In Rhino, there are several types of lighting. In this video, we're going to learn a little bit about artificial lighting. What you see on the screen is a rendering using the normal quality, and I have 5 boxes. Those 5 boxes are using custom materials, and the one in the center is a polished material, which means that it has some reflection in it. When we talk about lighting, depending on the number of lights, the type of lights that you're using, that will have an effect on the rendering time, because it's not only calculating the lighting, it's also calculating the shadows and any aspects or settings that the materials that you are using on the geometry is affecting the lighting. Meaning, if it's if you have a lot of material that has a bump, so the lighting has some effect on the little dents or bumps that the surfaces have. If you have a lot of reflection, or if it's a gloss finish or a frosted glass material, then lighting is also having an impact on the geometry and also on the rendering time. I'm going to minimize my rendering, and now I'm using the default render mode in my environment. I can change it to shaded mode, and even when you're navigating in the default render mode compared to compared to shaded mode, because there's still some calculation about the lighting, then navigating through the render mode is a little bit slower compared to shaded mode. That's why I show you how to create a render display mode that shows the actual material without showing the lighting, so it speeds up it will speed up the process on your computer and the internal calculation that it needs to perform in order to display the rendering mode. Lighting, we'll have our lighting toolbars. We'll find them under the render tools, and it will be next to the rendering buttons. I'm gonna try as much as possible to be using only the render preview, since we haven't covered the rendering settings. That will be covered in a future video. But from the lighting buttons, we're gonna focus on the first, on the basic and most common lighting types. Now, before we start placing artificial lights, I want you to be aware that whenever you open and create a new file using any of the templates, by default Rhino will use the environment lighting or the skylight on each scene. That's why when you place any geometry and you go to the default render mode, you see a kind of like a shading or environmental shade on the object. This is taking some memory, or is using some of the of your computer memory. So I will say the first thing to do, at least for this exercise, and when you're studying like the lighting, is be aware that this is on by default, but you can turn it off, and then you can study your rendering with or without the skylight on. Just be aware that when you have the skylight on, that will consume a lot of memory and time from your computer when doing the test renderings. But I'll get more into detail about that. For now, I'm just gonna ask you to go to lights, so type the command lights, and then you're gonna get this window or this pop-up that it shows sun and skylight, and skylight is on, just uncheck it, and then now that shade will go away from your render view, and now you can start working on the lighting. In addition to that, I would like you to go to work plane and then unchecked work plane. I'll cover that in a little bit as well. So once you have all that, then let's go back to our file with the boxes, and then I'm going to do the same thing in here. So I will type lights, skylight off, and ground is off. So now you can see the difference. As I hover over and on each box, you can see how some faces are shaded, and then there's a shadow that's being displayed. Just because you see a shadow, that doesn't mean that there is an actual sun place or turn on. When you type the lights command, that's where you will see all the artificial lights that you place, and they will be listed in here, and then all the different properties for each type of light. You will be able to manage to remove lights from this window, but you cannot remove the sun or the skylight. You can turn them off, but you cannot remove them. So the first light that we're going to review is spotlight. So it's this one right here that looks like a cone. Basically, for the spotlight, you are going to draw, or it looks like you're modeling a cone, and then you will reposition it. So I'm going to click on that spotlight button, and then it's going to ask you to select the base. For the base, I'm still in render mode. So for the base, I'm going to select one of the corners of this plane that I located. So that will be my base, and then you will draw the radius of the cone base, and then the height of the cone. So when I draw the height of the cone, I will either click on my I will use either my top, my front, or my right view to place it, just to make sure that it is straight. So in this case, I'm going to use the top view, make sure that my ortho is on, and then click. See how you when you place it, because your skylight is off, now everything is dark, and the only source of lighting is the spotlight that you just created. From there, I will not be able to see my spotlight in render mode, but I can see in my other viewports. So I will reposition it, and I will make sure that it's hitting one of my objects. So I'm repositioning with the gumball, and then going through the different viewports. Once you have it in place, you can see how I zoom in. I move my spotlight closer to my object, and then my the boundary on my light gets smaller as I get closer to my object or to the plane that I placed. And then the further I get, the larger the boundary of or the spectrum of my light. Now that I added that light, if I type the lights command, you can see how a new light was added in my list. I can rename it if I want. So I can select it and then click on the name and then give it a name. So I'm gonna call it Spotlight. You can control the intensity from the lighting settings using the lights tab from this pop-up. So I can click in here and then change the number to, let's say, 25. 25, enter, and you can see how that changes the intensity in my perspective viewport. I'm going to maximize it so you can manipulate it in the intensity in here, or you can change it the color also. Let's say I wanted to make it red, and now you have a red spotlight. It's right now that light has been assigned to my default layer. If you want to move it to a different layer, just make sure that you select the lighting object and then move it to the desired layer. You can also change settings from your light by going to the properties panel. Make sure that your light is selected, and you can control the color, the intensity, how you want your shadow intensity to be as well, and then the hardness of the spotlight hardness of that light. So I'm going to put intensity to 100 using the properties panel, and now I'm going to change spotlight hardness to go to 100%. You can see how it gets like really like sharp edges or on the projection of my light. If I go to, let's say, 4, you can see how it gets, it's like a gradient that goes from a brighter center or core to a very like dull edge. The shadow intensity, let's leave the shadow intensity. I'm gonna try to move this plane. You can see how the object is generating some the light is helping me for the object to display the shadow. So if I select again my spotlight and then go to the shadow settings, right now it's 100. You can see how I lower the number, and then the shadow gets lighter and lighter. So you can control that. Also, if at one point you want your this light to be off, you can use the properties panel and then uncheck the on box, and now that light is turned off. Or you can do it by using the lights tab and clicking on the light bulb right here. Since lights are actual objects, you can copy the objects or the lights either like if it was a regular object using the gumball or using the copy command, or you can place another light. So I'm going to create a copy of this one. I'm going to hold shift and I'm going to copy with the alt key and the gumball. So right now those two lights are generating, and they're not only a light source, but they're both generating shadows. I will say most of the time we're gonna have more than one light source when we have our models. However, if you want to for every single light to cast shadows, that's gonna take a lot of time for to complete a rendering. So I will say my recommendation is to have a minimum number of lights to cast shadows. Meaning, if you have 10 lights, maybe some of them are just to generate the lighting effect, but maybe only 1 or 2 are the ones producing shadows. Because again, the more the more lights we have, the longer it will take, and it's even worse when all the light sources are generating shadows. So again, keep it to the minimum. If your computer can afford more than 2 lights without killing and wasting a lot of time, then that's fine. You can use more than 2. But my personal recommendation and use again is 1 or 2 lights, artificial lights. That would include your environmental lights, either your skylight or your sun. So in that case that I created that copy, I will select one of those lights and then make sure that shadow intensity is to 0. So now just the copy that I created is the one generating or controlling the shadow of the object. You can see how the other one is not producing any shadow at the moment. One of the misconceptions that we have sometimes is that by increasing the size of your light source, that will increase the intensity. The intensity is always the same regardless of the size of your light source. What you increase when scaling up your lighting is that the boundaries or the field that the light covers is different. So you can see how I'm scaling it up or down, but the intensity doesn't change unless I use the intensity settings. Now let's turn it off, and then we're going to review another type of light. Now the next one is the rectangular light. The rectangular light, think of this, you're going to draw a rectangle. So first you need to click on the target. So I'm gonna say I'm gonna draw it in my top view. So that's my where my target is gonna start. Then I need to determine the length and then the width. Once you place it, and then you're gonna get a rectangular object that's placed at the ground plane, and then at the ground floor, C plane, and then I'm gonna move it up. That this has an arrow that shows the direction of your light, and then the plane. Now I'm going to rotate and then now I have my light that's looking down. There are certain changes that even though you make them in the actual light source, your render mode will not be updated. One of those changes is that right now my light is looking down. If I render my perspective, you can see how all the objects will be illuminated. Now I'm gonna change the direction of my light and then flip it looking down, looking up. Now you can see that the direction is looking up, but nothing changed in my perspective viewport. Now if I render, you can see that the objects are not illuminated. So that was an update that I did on the lighting, but the rendered mode doesn't update that setting. So, but just follow the direction of your rectangular light by using this arrow. So I'm gonna flip it back. Now you can manipulate also the intensity, the intensity of the light, the same way that you did with the spotlight. The shadow intensity. You don't have hardness, if you remember, for the spotlight. You could control the hardness of the light to be projected, and then this one is like kind of like a soft light that doesn't have boundaries, like defined boundaries. You have the on settings or on switch. You can change the color as well. You can change the width, so it's not a big like a noticeable change, but if I change the shape or adjust the shape of my lighting source. So I want to change the width. I select, if I select this dot right here on the side of my light, that's the one that controls the width. So I'm going to show you two examples. One example shows was rendered using the default size of my rectangular light like this. And then the second image, this one right here, shows if I were to scale the width of my rectangular light. However, as you can see in the image, it's not an obvious change. You can see how the core or the center is brighter compared to when you enlarge or widen the rectangular light. That is a change that also is not updated in your render view. So you can see I make it short or not too wide, and then I make it really like wide, but nothing changes in my render mode in my perspective. So then for those cases, you will need to render to test your lighting. The rectangular light is the one that's the closest to have realistic interior lighting when creating or producing interior renderings. Intensity may vary and sometimes it's obvious. Let's say that you have your maximum intensity. In this case, let's say that that's your intensity at the 100%. You will see how if I create a copy, now that's visible in the viewport, so it will be more visible when you render it. Our next type of light review is directional light, and it's the one that looks like an arrow right here. From after clicking on that button, you need to define the target location. So I'm going to click on the bottom corner of this cube right there, and after that I need to find a location for our lighting source. I'm going to say I click on my ortho. No, I don't want ortho. On the angle where I want it to be located at, and after that you can see how the preview got updated. If I select that light, then I can see that the direction, not only by looking at my arrow shape on my light source, but also by finding that point at the end of that line where the light is being projected. So that will be my target. Similar properties on the properties panel as my rectangular light. Now this light allows you to have and control a large amount of a field or a large environment. You can move it the same way and adjust it the same way that you were doing it before with the gumball on the other types of lights. If you want to modify it after placing it, you can select that point that's living on the arrow shape, and then after that move it up or down as however you prefer. And then you can see how the shadows start changing. So when I said that this looks like a sun system, it's because a sun it acts like a directional light, but the difference is that with this type of light you can select the actual direction of your lighting source, which is something that you wouldn't be able to do with the sun. So I can play with it in my right viewport or come back in my top view and start adjusting it. If I render, then you can see how I get really sharp shadows, as it is it is different than the rectangular light. So this, as I was mentioning, I will use it if it's an exterior rendering and you want to control the location of your sun. Although this is not your sun, but you have better control of finding a location and then a good location of your sun, and also an eye catching shadow. Because sometimes when we have exterior renderings, we want to get a view in the lighting that sells our idea, uh, and sometimes it is easier to manipulate the lighting source with an object than trying to find the best time with the settings, and then you'll understand that once we go over the sun system. Now the next light is the linear light. So this is like a curved light that you can use. You will draw, think of this, you're drawing a line. I have this space right here that you can think it is an interior, and then I just need 2 clicks in order to place that light. It will be placed at the C plane, so I need to bring it up. And then in my preview, it looks like a spotlight. But if I render this, it renders like if it was a small linear light. You can see how the ends, it shows like dark spots on each end. It is more obvious if I make it smaller, so I can use the scale option with the gumball and make it smaller. Nothing changed on my preview, but if I re-render now, you can see how the lighting effect got shorter, and now you can see the length of that linear light. And then again, similar settings that you have from before with other types of lights. And then the last light that we're going to cover is a point light. A point light, you can think of this if you're placing recessed lighting, so down lights or up lights. So you just need to click on the location where you want it. So you place it right now, and I put it at the ground plane, and then I move it up, and now I can see it. I can see that point light right there. If I render it, then I will see that little point light. So if you have some floor lamps as well, or a table lamp, you can use spotlight. Remember, at the end, for interiors, it's a combination of different types of lights. You can create copies for this one. And then it will update in the preview. But again, you cannot rely 100% on the preview on the render mode, because as you saw so far, some of the changes are not accurately represented until you render it. For interiors, as I was saying, like you will use a combination of lights. As an ambient light, maybe what you use is a rectangular light, and then you start putting more additional lights like spotlights or linear lights, depending on whatever the need of your lighting it is. Sometimes for recessed lighting, you may also use spotlights. And then if for exteriors, I will say directional lights, and then maybe some spotlights as well. So now it's time for you to play with them. You can test it and then play with the settings in intensity and colors for all these type of lights.